I've been having this debate in my mind about which housing structure is best. Walls, floors, or ceilings. First, let's get the obvious out of the way. Floors are clearly not on the same level as the other two. Don't get me wrong, I like floors as much as the next person, but they're just not as essential as walls or ceilings. Obviously, floors are still very useful and practical. Without them, we'd just be standing on like grass or dirt all the time. But while pretty much every building structure needs walls and a ceiling to exist properly, if you go into a random grassland and you assess what's there, you'll pretty quickly notice there's no wall, there's no ceiling, but what am I standing on? A floor. And that's really the core of my argument. The world comes with floors as a default. You're pretty much always standing on a floor. So as a housing structure, it's just not quite as impactful. Now let's have the real debate. What's better between ceilings and walls? Let's start with ceilings. You basically need ceilings to have a true shelter. If your house didn't have a ceiling, there could be stuff dropping in from above you all the time. Pretty much anything within your house would be subject to a bunch of damage from things like rain or snow, and you wouldn't have much shade from sunlight either. And the structure's ability to control brightness and temperature levels would decrease significantly as well. Of course, this is all making the assumption that without a ceiling, you wouldn't have a roof either, which I think makes sense. Without a ceiling, you'd also have like a ton of life coming into your house, and not in a good way. Squirrels, birds, leaves, branches, they could pretty much enter whenever they want to. On the other hand, walls are probably at the very least just as important. They also provide direct shelter, maybe not to the same level as a ceiling does, because I'd say having stuff drop on you is more concerning than having stuff enter a building horizontally. But still, a wall is also pretty crucial for protecting from elements and animals and things like that. And I think that wall truthers would make the argument that walls are much more important in the interior of a house. Because humans generally operate in a horizontal fashion, walls are what we normally use to separate areas. Without walls, we wouldn't have a lot of essential things like doors or even just rooms in general. I mean, I guess you could still kind of have rooms to some extent, but it wouldn't be the same. Like, imagine having a bathroom without walls. That wouldn't work very well. Wall truthers may also make the argument that without walls, you can't really have a ceiling, because ceilings are built on the backs of walls. But I actually disagree with this because this is a theoretical question. I think you have to take a theoretical thinking approach to the matter. It is still possible to have a ceiling without walls. If you're trying to think of a building without walls but with a ceiling, you just have to imagine a floating ceiling, because in theory you could have a helicopter hold up a ceiling for a house. And because this is all theoretical, the helicopter wouldn't have a tangible effect on the housing besides holding up the ceiling itself. So the helicopter wouldn't make any noise or anything like that. How practical is a helicopter holding up a ceiling that's not attached to any walls? Hard to say, but I don't think it particularly matters in this context. So I think at this point I've made the case that both walls and ceilings are valid answers to the question of walls versus floors versus ceilings. But the question is, which one is the true right answer? And I want to make it clear that right now, I do not have a decision made. I am coming up with this on the fly. Let's analyze this building, for instance. It appears to have 4 walls and 1 ceiling. Ceiling truthers would have you believe that the fact that a building needs 4 walls and just 1 ceiling means the 1 ceiling is clearly more valuable than any individual wall. While wall truthers would have you believe that the fact that a building needs 4 walls means that the totality of the value of the 4 walls is more than the 1 ceiling, thus making walls more important and valuable. And I don't want to leave out the floor truthers either. The floor truthers would probably make an argument that's not very good. So where am I on this issue? As I look at this building, I think I'm realizing that I'm very slightly leaning towards walls, because what I haven't mentioned is that walls don't just support themselves. Walls are absolutely crucial for so many things inside of buildings. Windows, usually on walls. Light bulbs, usually on walls. Doors, usually on walls. Whereas ceilings just don't have quite as much impact on other things. I guess you could hang chandeliers and some things from ceilings, but definitely not as much as you can hang from or in a wall. If you think about it, basically the whole geometry of your house and how you move about it is because of walls. You line up bookshelves on walls. You line up cabinets on walls. Your sink, your bathtub, they're probably lined up against walls. While your ceiling is just kind of there the entire time, which is great. It's consistent. But I'm just not sure if a good ceiling is quite as valuable as a good wall. At least that's my take. You can disagree with me. You'll just be wrong. That's going to be it for the video. Respect the walls. Respect to the ceilings. Floors are there too, I guess. Thank you for watching. See you next time, and bye-bye.